Hello again, and welcome back to the Midnight Raven Reads for the second part of Vampire Academy. Tonight, we'll be reading another 2 chapters. If you'd like to hear me read even more stories, please hit like and leave a comment down below. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy this reading. And now, let's begin. Sending us straight to class after our first meeting seemed beyond cruel. But that's exactly what Kurova did. Lissa was led away, and I watched her go, glad the bond would allow me to keep reading her emotional temperature. They actually sent me to one of the guidance counselors first. He was an ancient Moroi guy, one I remembered from before I'd left. I honestly couldn't believe he was still around. The guy was so freaking old, he should have retired, or died. The visit took all of 5 minutes. He said nothing about my return and asked a few questions about what classes I'd taken in Chicago and Portland. He compared those against my old file and hastily scrawled out a new schedule. I took it sullenly and headed out to my first class. First period, Advanced Guardian Combat Techniques. Second period, Bodyguard Theory and Personal Protection 3. Third period, Weight Training and Conditioning. Fourth period, Senior Language Arts, Novices. Fifth period, Animal Behavior and Physiology. Sixth period, Pre-Calculus. Seventh period, Moroi Culture 4. And eighth period, Slavic Art. Ugh, I'd forgotten how long the academy school day was. Novices and Moroi took separate classes during the first half of the day, which meant I wouldn't see Lissa until after lunch, if we had any afternoon classes together. Most of them were standard senior classes, so I felt my odds were pretty good. Slavic Art struck me as the kind of elective no one signed up for, so hopefully they'd snuck her in there too. Dimitri and Alberta escorted me to the Guardian's gym for first period, neither one acknowledging my existence. Walking behind them, I saw how Alberta wore her hair in a short pixie cut that showed her promise mark and Molnesia marks. A lot of female guardians did this. It didn't matter so much for me now, since my neck had no tattoos yet, and I didn't want to ever cut my hair. She and Dimitri didn't say anything, and walked along like it was any other day. When we arrived, the reactions of my peers indicated it was anything but. They were in the middle of setting up when we entered the gym, and just like in the commons, all eyes fell on me. I couldn't decide if I felt like a rock star or a circus freak. All right then. If I was going to be stuck here for a while, I wasn't going to act afraid of them all anymore. Lissa and I once held the school's respect, and it was time to remind everyone of that. Scanning and staring, open-mouthed novices, I looked for a familiar face. Most of them were guys. One caught my eye, and I could barely hold back my grin. Hey Mason, wipe the drool off your face. If you're going to think about me naked, do it on your own time. A few snorts and snickers broke the odd silence, and Mason Ashford snapped out of his haze, giving me a lopsided smile. With red hair that stuck up everywhere, and a smattering of freckles, he was nice looking, though not exactly hot. He was also one of the funniest guys I knew. We'd been good friends back in the day. This is my time, Hathaway. I'm leading today's session. Oh yeah? I retorted. Huh. Well, I guess this is a good time to think about me naked then. It's always a good time to think about you naked, added someone nearby, breaking the tension further. Eddie Castile, another friend of mine. Dimitri shook his head and walked off, muttering something in Russian that didn't sound complimentary. But as for me, well, just like that, I was one of the novices again. They were an easygoing bunch, less focused on petty degree and politics than the Moroi students. The class engulfed me, and I found myself laughing and seeing those I'd nearly forgotten about. Everyone wanted to know where we'd been. Apparently Lissa and I had become legends. I couldn't tell them we'd left, of course, so I offered up a lot of taunts and wouldn't you like to knows that served just as well. The happy reunion lasted a few more minutes before the adult guardian who oversaw the training came over and scolded Mason for neglecting his duties. Still grinning, he barked out orders to everyone, explaining what exercises to start with. Uneasily, I realized I didn't know most of them. "Come on, Hathaway," he said, taking my arm. "You can be my partner. Let's see what you've been doing all this time." An hour later, he had his answer. "Not practicing, huh?" "Ow," I groaned, momentarily incapable of normal speech. He extended a hand and helped me up from the mat he knocked me down on, about 50 times. "I hate you," I told him, rubbing a spot on my thigh that was going to leave a wicked bruise tomorrow. "You'd hate me more if I held back." "Yeah, that's true," I agreed, staggering along as the class put the equipment back. "You actually did okay." "What? I just had my ass handed to me." "Well, of course you did. It's been 2 years. But hey, you're still walking. That's something." He grinned mockingly. "Did I mention I hate you?" He flashed me another smile, which quickly faded to something more serious. "Don't take this the wrong way. Don't take this the wrong way. You really are a scraper, but there's no way you'll be able to take your trials in the spring." "They're making me take extra practice sessions," I explained. Not that it mattered. I planned on getting Lissa and me out of here before these practices really became an issue. "I'll be ready." "Extra sessions with who?" "That tall guy. Dimitri." Mason stopped walking and stared at me. "You're putting in extra time with Belikov?" "Yeah, so what?" "So if the man is a god." "Exaggerate much?" I asked. "No, I'm serious. He's all quiet and antisocial usually, but when he fights, wow. If you think you're hurting now, you're going to be dead when he's done with you." Great, something else to improve my day. I elbowed him and went on to second period. The class covered the essentials of being a bodyguard and was required for all seniors. Actually, it was the third in a series that had started junior year. That meant I was behind in this class too, but I hoped protecting Lissa in the real world had given me some insight. Our instructor was Stan Alto, whom we refer to simply as Stan behind his back, and Guardian Alto in former settings. He was a little older than Dimitri, but not nearly as tall, and he always looked so pissed off. Today, that look intensified when he walked into the classroom and saw me sitting there. His eyes widened in mock surprise as he circled the room and came to stand beside my desk. "What's this? No one told me we had a guest speaker here today. Rose Hathaway, what a privilege. How very generous of you to take the time out of your busy schedule and share your knowledge with us." I felt my cheeks burning, but in a great show of self-control, I stopped myself from telling him to buzz off. I'm pretty sure my face must have delivered that message, however, because his sneer increased. He gestured for me to stand up. "Well, come on. Don't sit there. Come up to the front so you can help me lecture the class." I sank into my seat. "You don't really mean..." The taunting smile dried up. "I mean exactly what I say, Hathaway. Go to the front of the class." A thick silence enveloped the room. Stan was a scary instructor, and most of the class was too awed to laugh at my disgrace quite yet. Refusing to crack, I strode up to the front of the room and turned to face the class. I gave them a bold look and tossed my hair over my shoulders, earning a few sympathetic smiles from my friends. I then noticed I had a larger audience than expected, few guardians, including Dimitri, lingered in the back of the room. Outside the academy, guardians focused on one-on-one protection. Here, guardians had a lot more people to protect, and they had to train the novices. So rather than follow any one person around, they worked shifts guarding the school as a whole and monitoring classes. "So, Hathaway," said Stan cheerfully, strolling back up to the front with me, "enlighten us about your protective techniques." "My techniques?" "Of course, because presumably you must have had some sort of plan the rest of us couldn't understand when you took an underage Moroi royal out of the academy and exposed her to constant Strigoi threats." It was the Kurova lecture all over again, except with more witnesses. "We never ran into any Strigoi," I replied stiffly. "Obviously," he said with a snicker. "I already figured that out, seeing as how you're still alive." I wanted to shout that maybe I could have defeated a Strigoi, but after getting beat up in the last class, I now suspected I couldn't have survived an attack by Mason, let alone an actual Strigoi. When I didn't say anything, Stan appeared pacing in front of the class. "So, what'd you do? How'd you make sure she stayed safe? Did you avoid going out at night?" "Sometimes. That was true, especially when we first ran away. We'd relaxed a little after months went by with no attacks." "Sometimes?" he repeated in a high-pitched voice, making my answer sound incredibly stupid. "Well then, I suppose you slept during the day and stayed on guard at night." No." "No? But that's one of the first things mentioned in the chapter on solo guarding. Oh wait, you wouldn't know that because you weren't here." I swallowed back more swear words. "I watched the area whenever we went out," I said, needing to defend myself. "Oh? Well, that's something. Did you use Carnegie's quadrant surveillance method? Or the rotational survey?" I didn't say anything. "Ah, I'm guessing you used the Hathaway glance around when you remember to method." "No," I exclaimed angrily. "That's not true. I watched her. She's still alive, isn't she?" He walked back up to me and leaned into my face. "Because you got lucky." "Strigoi aren't lurking around every corner out there," I shot back. "It's not like what we've been taught. It's safer than you guys make it sound." "Safer? Safer? We are at war with the Strigoi," he yelled. I could smell coffee on his breath. He was so close. One of them could walk right up to you and snap your pretty little neck before you even noticed him, and he'd barely break a sweat doing it. You might have more speed and strength than a Moroi or a human, but you are nothing compared to a Strigoi. They are deadly and they are powerful. And do you know what makes them more powerful? No way was I going to let this jerk make me cry. Looking away from him, I tried to focus on something else. My eyes rested on Dimitri and the other guardians. They were watching my humiliation, stone-faced. "Moroi blood," I whispered. "What was that?" asked Stan loudly. "I didn't catch that." I spun around to face him. "Moroi blood. Moroi blood makes them stronger." He nodded in satisfaction and took a few steps back. "Yes, it does. It makes them stronger and harder to destroy. They'll kill and drink from a human or dhampir, but they want Moroi blood more than anything else. They seek it. They've turned to the dark side to gain immortality, and they want to do whatever they can to keep that immortality. Desperate Strigoi have attacked Moroi in public. Groups of Strigoi have raided academies exactly like this one. They are Strigoi who have lived for thousands of years and fed off generations of Moroi. They're almost impossible to kill, and that is why Moroi numbers are dropping. They aren't strong enough, even with guardians, to protect themselves. Some Moroi don't even see the point of running anymore, and are simply turning Strigoi by choice. And as the Moroi disappear, so do the dhampirs, I finished. Well, he said, licking sprayed spit off of his lips. It looks like you learned something after all. Now we have to see if you can learn enough to pass this class and qualify for your field experience next semester. Ouch. I spent the rest of that horrible class in my seat, thankfully, replaying those last words in my mind. The senior year field experience was the best part of a novice's education. We'd have no classes for half a semester. Instead, we'd each be assigned a Moroi student to guard and follow around. The adult guardians would monitor us and test us with stage attacks and other threats. How a novice passed that field experience was almost as important as the rest of all her grades combined. It could influence which Moroi she got assigned to after graduation. And me, there was only one Moroi I wanted. 2 classes later, I finally earned my lunch escape. As I stumbled across campus toward the commons, Dimitri fell into step beside me, not looking particularly godlike, unless you counted his godly good looks. I suppose you saw what happened in Stan's class? I asked, not bothering with titles. Yes. And you don't think that was unfair? Was he right? Do you think you were fully prepared to protect Vasilisa? I looked down at the ground. I kept her alive, I mumbled. How did you do fighting against your classmates today? The question was mean. I didn't answer and knew I didn't need to. I'd had another training class after Stan's, and no doubt Dimitri had watched me get beat up there too. If you can't fight them, yeah, I know, I snapped. He slowed his long stride to match my pain-filled one. You're strong and fast by nature. You just need to keep yourself trained. Didn't you play any sports while you were gone? Sure, I shrugged. Now and then. You didn't join any teams? Too much work. If I'd wanted to practice that much, I'd have stayed here. He gave me an exasperated look. You'll never be able to really protect the princess if you don't own your skills. You'll always be lacking. I'll be able to protect her, I said fiercely. You have no guarantees of being assigned to her, you know, for your field experience or after you graduate. Dimitri's voice was low and unapologetic. They hadn't given me a warm or fuzzy mentor. No one wants to waste the bond, but no one's going to give her an inadequate guardian either. If you want to be with her, then you need to work for it. You have your lessons, you have me. Use us or don't. You're an ideal choice to guard Vasilisa when you both graduate. If you can prove you're worthy, I hope you will. Lissa. Call her Lissa, I corrected. She hated her full name. Much preferring the Americanized nickname. He walked away, and suddenly I didn't feel like such a badass anymore. By now, I'd burned up a lot of time leaving class. Most everyone else had long since sprinted inside the commons for lunch, eager to maximize their social time. I'd almost made it back there myself when a voice under the door's overhang called to me. Rose? Peering in the voice's direction, I caught sight of Viktor Dashkov, his kind face smiling at me as he leaned on a cane near the building's wall. His 2 guardians stood nearby at a polite distance. Mr. Dash, Your Highness, hi. I caught myself just in time, having nearly forgotten Moroi royal terms. I hadn't used them while living among humans. The Moroi chose their rulers from among 12 royal families. The eldest in the family got the title of prince or princess. Lissa had gotten hers, because she was the only one left in her line. How was your first day? He asked. Not over yet. I tried to think of something conversational. Are you visiting here for a while? I'll be leaving this afternoon after I say hello to Natalie. When I heard Vasilisa and you had returned, I simply had to come see you. I nodded, not sure what else to say. He was more Lissa's friend than mine. I wanted to tell you, he spoke hesitantly. I understand the gravity of what you did, but I think Headmistress Kurova failed to acknowledge something. You did keep Vasilisa safe all this time. That is impressive. Well, it's not like I faced down Strigoi or anything, I said. But you faced down some things? Sure. The school sent Psyhounds once. Remarkable. Not really. Avoiding them was pretty easy. He laughed. I've hunted with them before. They aren't that easy to evade. Not with their powers and intelligence. It was true. Psyhounds were one of the many types of magical creatures that wandered the world. Creatures that humans never knew about or else didn't believe they'd really seen. The hounds traveled in packs and shared a sort of psychic communication that made them particularly deadly to their prey. As did the fact that they resembled mutant wolves. Did you face anything else? I shrugged. Little things here and there. Remarkable, he repeated. Lucky, I think. It turns out I'm really behind in all this guardian stuff. I sounded just like Stan now. You're a smart girl. You'll catch up. And you also have your bond. I looked away. My ability to feel Lissa had been such a secret for so long, it felt weird to have others know about it. The histories are full of stories of guardians who could feel when their charges were in danger, Victor continued. I've made a hobby of studying up on it and some of the ancient ways. I've heard it's a tremendous asset. I guess, I shrugged. What a boring hobby, I thought, imagining him poring over prehistoric histories in some dank library covered in spider webs. Victor tilted his head, curiosity all over his face. Kurova and the others had had the same look when we'd mentioned our connection, like we were lab rats. What is it like, if you don't mind me asking? I don't know. I just sort of always have this hum of how she feels. Usually it's just emotions. We can't send messages or anything. I didn't tell him about slipping into her head. That part of it was hard, even for me to understand. But it doesn't work the other way? She doesn't sense you? I shook my head. His face shone with wonder. How did it happen? I don't know, I said, still glancing away. Just started 2 years ago. He frowned. Near the time of the accident? Hesitantly, I nodded. The accident was not something I wanted to talk about, that was for sure. Lissa's memories were bad enough without my own mixing into them. Twisted metal, a sensation of hot, then cold, then hot again. Lissa screaming over me, screaming for me to wake up, screaming for her parents and her brother to wake up. None of them had. Only me. And the doctors said that it was a miracle in itself. They said I shouldn't have survived. Apparently, sensing my discomfort, Victor let the moment go and returned to his earlier excitement. I can still barely believe this. It's been so long since this has happened. If it did happen more often, just think of what it could do for the safety of all Moroi. If only others could experience this too. I'll have to do more research and see if we can replicate it with others. Yeah, I was getting impatient. Despite how much I liked him, Natalie rambled a lot, and it was pretty clear which parent she'd inherited that quality from. Lunch was ticking down, and although Moroi and novices shared afternoon classes, Lissa and I wouldn't have much time to talk. Perhaps we could... He started coughing, a great seizing fit that made his whole body shake. His disease, Sandowski's syndrome, took the lungs down with it, while dragging the body toward death. I cast an anxious look at his guardians, and one of them stepped forward. Your Highness, he said politely, you need to go inside. It's too cold out here. Victor nodded. Yes, yes, and I'm sure Rose here wants to eat. He turned to me. Thank you for speaking to me. I can't emphasize how much it means to me that Vasilisa is safe, and that you helped with that. I promised her father I'd look after her if anything happened to him, and I felt like quite a failure when you left. A sinking sensation filled my stomach as I imagined him, racked with guilt and worry over our disappearance. Until now, I hadn't really thought about how others might have felt about us leaving. We made our goodbyes, and I finally arrived inside the school. As I did, I felt Lissa's anxiety spike. Ignoring the pain in my legs, I picked up my pace into the commons and nearly ran right into her. She didn't see me, though. Neither did the people standing with her. Erin and that little doll girl. I stopped and listened, just catching the end of the conversation. The girl leaned toward Lissa, who seemed more stunned than anything else. It looks to me like it came from a garage sale. I thought a precious Dragomir would have standards. Scorn dripped off the word Dragomir. Grabbing doll girl by the shoulder, I jerked her away. She was so light, she stumbled 3 feet and nearly fell. She does have standards, I said, which is why you're done talking to her. We didn't have the entire common's attention this time, thank God, but a few passing people had stopped to stare. What the hell do you think you're doing? Asked doll girl, blue eyes wide and sparkling with fury. Up close now, I was able to get a better look at her. She had the same slim build as most Moroi, but not the usual height, which was partly what made her look so young. The tiny purple dress she wore was gorgeous, reminding me that I was indeed dressed in thrift shop wear, but closer inspection led me to think it was a designer knockoff. I crossed my arms across my chest. Are you lost, little girl? The elementary school over on West Campus. A pink flush spread over her cheeks. Don't you ever touch me again. You screw with me and I'll screw you right back. Oh man, what an opening that was. Only a head shake from Lissa stopped me from unleashing any number of hilarious comebacks. Instead, I opted for simple brute force, so to speak. And if you mess with either of us again, I'll break you in half. If you don't believe me, go ask Dhampir about what I did to her arm in 9th grade. You were probably at nap time when it happened. The incident with Dhampir hadn't been one of my finer moments. I honestly hadn't expected to break any bones when I shoved her into a tree. Still, the incident had given me a dangerous reputation, in addition to my smart-ass one. The story had gained legendary status, and I like to imagine that it was still being told around campfires late at night. Judging from the look on the girl's face, it was. One of the patrolling staff members strolled by right then, casting suspicious eyes at our little meeting. Doll girl backed off, taking Erin's arm. Come on. Hey, Erin, I said cheerfully, remembering he was there. Nice to see you again. He gave me a quick nod and an easy smile, just as the girl dragged him off. Same old Erin. He might be nice and cute, but aggressive he was not. I turned to Lissa. You okay? She nodded. Any idea who I just threatened to beat up? Not a clue. I started to lead her towards the lunch line, but she shook her head at me. Gotta go see the feeders. A funny feeling settled over me. I'd gotten so used to being her primary blood source that the thought of returning to the Moroi's normal routine seemed strange. In fact, it almost bothered me. It shouldn't have. Daily feedings were a part of Moroi's life, something I hadn't been able to offer her while living on our own. It had been an inconvenient situation, one that left me weak on feeding days and her weak on the days in between. I should have been happy she would get some normality. I forced a smile. Sure. We walked into the feeding room, which sat adjacent to the cafeteria. It was set up with small cubicles dividing the room space in an effort to offer privacy. A dark-haired Moroi woman greeted us at the entrance and glanced down at her clipboard, flipping through pages. Finding what she needed, she made a few notes and then gestured for Lissa to follow. Me, she gave a puzzled look, but she didn't stop me from entering. She led us to one of the cubicles where a plump, middle-aged woman sat, leafing through a magazine. She looked up at our approach and smiled. In her eyes, I could see the dreamy, glazed-over look most feeders had. She'd probably neared her quota for the day, judging from how high she appeared to be. Recognizing Lissa, her smile grew. Welcome back, princess. The greeter left us, and Lissa sat down in the chair beside the woman. I sensed a feeling of discomfort in her, a little different from my own. This was weird for her too. It had been a long time. The feeder, however, had no such reservations. An eager look crossed her face, the look of a junkie about to get her next fix. Disgust poured into me. It was an old instinct, one that had been drilled in over the years. Feeders were essential to Moroi life. They were humans who willingly volunteered to be a regular blood source. Humans from the fringes of society who gave their lives over to the secret world of the Moroi. They were well cared for and given all the comforts they could need, but at the heart of it, they were drug users, addicts to the Moroi saliva and the rush it offered with each bite. The Moroi and Guardians looked down on this dependency, even though the Moroi couldn't have survived otherwise unless they took victims by force. Hypocrisy at its finest. The feeder tilted her head, giving Lissa full access to her neck. Her skin there was marked with scars from years of daily bites. The infrequent feedings Lissa and I had done had kept my neck clear. My bite marks never lasted more than a day or so. Lissa leaned forward, fangs biting into the feeder's yielding flesh. The woman closed her eyes, making a soft sound of pleasure. I swallowed, watching Lissa drink. I couldn't see any blood, but I could imagine it. A surge of emotion grew in my chest. Longing. Jealousy. I averted my eyes, staring at the floor. Mentally, I scolded myself. What's wrong with you? Why should you miss it? You only did it once every day. You aren't addicted, not like this, and you don't want to be. But I couldn't help myself. Couldn't help the way I felt as I recalled the bliss and rush of a vampire's bite. Lissa finished, and we returned to the commons, moving toward the lunch line. It was short, since we only had 15 minutes left, and I strolled up and began to load my plate with French fries and some rounded, bite-sized objects that looked vaguely like chicken nuggets. Lissa had grabbed a yogurt. Moroi needed food as dhampirs and humans did, but rarely had an appetite after drinking blood. So, how'd classes go? I asked. She shrugged. Her face was bright with color and life now. Okay, lots of stairs, a lot of stairs, lots of questions about where we were, whispering. Same here, I said. The attendant checked us out, and we walked toward the tables. I gave Lissa a sidelong glance. You okay with that? They aren't bothering you, are they? No, it's fine. The emotions coming through the bond contradicted her words. And knowing I could feel that, she tried to change the subject by handing me her class schedule. I looked it over. First period, Russian 2. Second period, American colonial literature. Third period, basics of elemental control. Fourth period, ancient poverty. 5th period, animal behavior and physiology. 6th period, advanced calculus. 7th period, Moroi culture 4. And 8th period, Slavic art. Nerd, I said. If you weren't stupid math like me, we'd have the same afternoon schedule. I stopped walking. Why are you in elemental basics? That's a sophomore class. She eyed me. Because seniors take specialized classes. We fell silent at that. All Moroi wielded elemental magic. It was one of the things that differentiated living vampires from Strigoi, the dead vampires. Moroi viewed magic as a gift. It was part of their souls and connected them to the world. A long time ago, they used their magic openly, averting natural disasters and helping with things like food and water production. They didn't need to do that as much anymore, but the magic was still in their blood. It burned in them and made them want to reach out to the earth and wield their power. Academies like this existed to help Moroi control the magic and learn how to do increasingly complex things with it. Students also had to learn the rules that surrounded magic, rules that had been in place for centuries and were strictly reinforced. All Moroi had a small ability to each element. All Moroi had an ability in each element. When they got to be around our age, students specialized when one element grew stronger than the others. Earth, water, fire, or air. Not specializing was like not going through puberty. And Lissa hadn't specialized yet. Is Miss Carmack still teaching that? What'd she say? She says she's not worried. She thinks it'll come. Did you tell her about? Lissa shook her head. No, of course not. We let the subject drop. It was one we thought about a lot, but rarely spoke of. We started moving again, scanning the tables as we decided where to sit. A few pairs of eyes looked at us with blatant curiosity. Lissa, came a nearby voice. Glancing over, we saw Natalie waving at us. Lissa and I exchanged looks. Natalie was sort of Lissa's cousin in the way Victor was sort of her uncle, but we never hung out with her all that much. Lissa shrugged and headed in that direction. Why not? I followed reluctantly. Natalie was nice, but also one of the most uninteresting people I knew. Most royals at the school enjoyed a kind of celebrity status, but Natalie had never fit in with that crowd. She was too plain, too uninterested in the politics of the academy, and too clueless to really navigate them anyway. Natalie's friends eyed us with a quiet curiosity, but she didn't hold back. She threw her arms around us. Like Lissa, she had jade green eyes, but her hair was jet black, like Victor's had been before his disease grayed it. You're back. I knew you would be. Everyone said you were gone forever, but I never believed that. I knew you couldn't stay away. Why'd you go? There are so many stories about why you left. Lissa and I exchanged glances as Natalie prattled on. Camille said one of you got pregnant and went off to have an abortion, but I knew that couldn't be true. Someone else said you went off to hang out with Rose's mom, but I figured Miss Grove and Daddy would have been so upset if you turned up there. Did you know we might get to be roommates? I was talking to... On and on she chatted, flashing her fangs as she spoke. I smiled politely, letting Lissa deal with the onslaught until Natalie asked a dangerous question. What'd you do for blood, Lissa? The table regarded us questioningly. Lissa froze, but I immediately jumped in, the lie coming effortlessly to my lips. Oh, it's easy. There are a lot of humans who want to do it. Really? Asked one of Natalie's friends, wide-eyed. Yep. You find them at parties and stuff. They're all looking for a fix from something, and they don't really get that a vampire's doing it. Most are already so wasted they don't remember anyway. My already vague details dried up, so I simply shrugged it as cool and confident a way as I could manage. It wasn't like any of them knew any better. Like I said, it's easy, almost easier than with our own feeders. Natalie accepted this and then launched into some other topic. Lissa shot me a grateful look. Ignoring the conversation again, I took in the old faces, trying to figure out who was hanging out with whom and how power had shifted within the school. Mason, sitting with a group of novices, caught my eye, and I smiled. Near him, a group of Moroi royals sat, laughing over something. Erin and the blonde girl sat there too. "Hey, Natalie," I said, turning around and cutting her off. She didn't seem to notice or mind. "Who's Erin's new girlfriend?" "Huh? Oh, Mia Rinaldi." Seeing my blank look, she asked, "Don't you remember her?" "Should I? Was she here when we left?" "She's always been here," said Natalie. "She's only a year younger than us." I shot a questioning look at Lissa, who only shrugged. "Why is she so pissed off at us?" I asked. "Neither of us know her." "I don't know," answered Natalie. "Maybe she's jealous about Erin. She wasn't much of anybody when you guys left. She got really popular really fast. She isn't royal or anything, but once she started dating Erin, she..." "Okay, thanks," I interrupted. "It doesn't really..." My eyes lifted up from Natalie's face to Jesse's at glasses, just as he passed our table. Ah, Jesse. I'd forgotten about him. I liked flirting with Mason and some of the other novices, but Jesse was an entirely different category. You flirted with the other guys simply for the sake of flirting. You flirted with Jesse in the hopes of getting semi-naked with him. He was a royal Moroi, and he was so hot. He should have worn a "warning, flammable" sign. He met my eyes and grinned. "Hey Rose, welcome back. You still breaking hearts? Are you volunteering?" His grin widened. "Let's hang out sometime and find out, if you ever get parole." He kept walking, and I watched him, admiringly. Natalie and her friends stared at me in awe. I might not be a god in the Dimitri sense, but with this group, Lissa and I were gods, or at least former gods, of another nature. "Oh my god," exclaimed one girl. I didn't remember her name. "That was Jessie." "Yes," I said, smiling. "It certainly was." "I wish I looked like you," she added with a sigh. Their eyes fell on me. Technically, I was half Moroi, but my looks were human. I'd blended in well with humans during more time away, so much so that I'd barely thought about my appearance at all. Here, among the slim and small-chested Moroi girls, certain features, meaning my larger breasts and more defined hips, stood out. I knew I was pretty, but to Moroi boys, my body was more than just pretty. It was sexy in a risque way. Dhampirs were an exotic conquest, a novelty all Moroi guys wanted to try. It was ironic that Dhampirs had such an allure here, because slender Moroi girls looked very much like the super skinny runway models so popular in the human world. Most humans could never reach that ideal skinniness, just as Moroi girls could never look like me. Everyone wanted what she couldn't have. Lissa and I got to sit together in our shared afternoon classes, but didn't do much talking. The stares she'd mentioned certainly did follow us, but I found that the more I talked to people, the more they warmed up. Slowly, gradually, they seemed to remember who we were, and the novelty, though not the intrigue, of her crazy stunt wore off. Or maybe, I should say, they remembered who I was, because I was the only one talking. Lissa stared straight ahead, listening but neither acknowledging nor participating in my tense conversation. I could feel anxiety and sadness pouring out of her. All right, I told her when classes finally ended. We stood outside the school, and I was fully aware that in doing so, I was already breaking the terms of our agreement with Kurova. We're not staying here, I told her, looking around the campus uneasily. I'm going to find a way to get us out. You think we could really do it a second time? Lissa asked quietly. Absolutely, I spoke with certainty, again relieved she couldn't read my feelings. Escaping the first time had been tricky enough. Doing it again would be a real bitch. Not that I couldn't still find a way. You really would, wouldn't you? She smiled, more to herself than to me, like she thought of something funny. Of course you would. It's just, well, she sighed. I don't know if we should go. Maybe we should stay. I blinked in astonishment. What? Not one of my more eloquent answers, but the best I could manage. I never expected this from her. I saw you, Rose. I saw you talking to the other novices during class, talking about practice. You missed that. It's not worth it, I argued. Not if you... I couldn't finish, but she was right. She'd read me. I had missed the other novices, even some of the Moroi, but there was more to it than just that. The weight of my inexperience, how much I'd fallen behind, had been growing all day. It might be better, she countered. I haven't had as many, things happening in a while. I haven't felt like anyone was following or watching us. I didn't say anything to that. Before we left the academy, she'd always felt like someone was following her, like she was being hunted. I'd never seen evidence to support that, but I had once heard one of our teachers go on and on about the same sort of thing. Miss Carp. She'd been a pretty Moroi, with deep auburn hair and high cheekbones. And I was pretty sure she'd been crazy. You never know who's watching, she used to say, walking briskly around the classroom as she shut all the blinds. Or who's following you. Best to always be safe. We'd snickered amongst ourselves, because that's what students do around eccentric and paranoid teachers. The thought of Lissa acting like her bothered me. What's wrong? Lissa asked, noticing that I was lost in thought. Huh? Nothing. Just thinking, I sighed, trying to balance my own wants with what was best for her. Liz, we can stay, I guess, but there are a few conditions. This made her laugh. A Rose ultimatum, huh? I'm serious. Words I didn't say very much. I want you to stay away from the royals. Not like Natalie or anything, but, the others. The power players. Camille, Carly, that group. Her amusement turned to astonishment. Are you serious? Sure, you never liked them anyway. You did. No, not really. I like what they could offer. All that parties and stuff. And you can go without that now? She looked skeptical. Sure, we did in Portland. Yeah, but that was different. Her eyes stared off, not really focused on any one thing. Here, I've got to be a part of that. I can't avoid it. The hell you do? Natalie stays out of that stuff. Natalie isn't going to inherit her family's title, she retorted. I've already got it. I've got to be involved. Start making connections. Andre... Liz, I groaned. You aren't Andre. I couldn't believe she was still comparing herself to her brother. He was always involved in all that stuff. Yeah, well, I snapped back. He's dead now. Her face hardened. Sometimes you aren't very nice. You don't keep me around to be nice. You want nice? There are a dozen sheep in there who would rip each other's throats to get in the good with the Dragomir princess. You keep me around to tell you the truth, and here it is. Andre's dead. You're the heir now, and you're going to deal with it however you can. But for now, that means staying away from the other royals. Well, just lie low. Coast through the middle. Get involved in that stuff again, Liz, and you'll drive yourself crazy? She supplied when I didn't finish. Now I looked away. I didn't mean... It's okay, she said after a moment. She sighed and touched my arm. Fine. We'll stay, and we'll keep out of all that stuff. We'll coast through the middle like you want. Hang out with Natalie, I guess. To be perfectly honest, I didn't want any of that. I wanted to go to all the royal parties and wild drunken festivities like we'd done before. We kept out of that life for years until Alyssa's parents and brother died. Andre should have been the one to inherit the family's title, and he'd certainly acted like it. Handsome and outgoing, he charmed everyone he knew, and had been a leader in all the royal cliques and clubs that existed on campus. After his death, Lissa had felt it was her family duty to take his place. I'd gotten to join that world with her. It was easy for me because I didn't really have to deal with the politics of it. I was a pretty dhampir, one who wouldn't mind getting into trouble and pulling crazy stunts. I became a novelty. They liked having me around for the fun of it. Lissa had to deal with other matters. The Dragomirs were one of the 12 ruling families. She'd have a very powerful place in Moroi society, and the other young royals wanted to get in good with her. Fake friends tried to schmooze her and get her to team up against other people. The royals could bribe and backstab in the same breath, and that was just with each other. To dhampirs and non-royals, they were completely unpredictable. That cruel culture had eventually taken its toll on Lissa. She had an open, kind nature, one that I loved, and hated to see her upset and stressed by royal games. She had grown fragile since the accident, and all the parties in the world weren't worth seeing her hurt. All right then, I said finally. We'll see how this goes. If anything goes wrong, anything at all, we leave. No arguments. She nodded. Rose? We both looked up at Dimitri's looming form. I hoped he hadn't heard the part about us leaving. You're late for practice, he said evenly. Seeing Lissa, he gave a polite nod. Princess? As he and I walked away, I worried about Lissa and wondered if staying here was the right thing to do. I felt nothing alarming through the bond, but her emotions spiked all over the place. Confusion, nostalgia, fear, anticipation. Strong and powerful, they flooded into me. I felt the pull just before it happened. It was exactly like what happened on the plane. Her emotions grew so strong that they sucked me into her head before I could stop them. I could now see and feel what she did. She walked slowly around the commons toward the small Russian Orthodox chapel that served most of our school's religious needs. Lissa had always attended Mass regularly. Not me. I had a standing arrangement with God. I'd agreed to believe in him, barely, so long as he let me sleep in on Sundays. But as she went inside, I could feel that she wasn't there to pray. She had another purpose, one I didn't know about. Glancing around, she verified that neither the priest nor any worshippers were close by. The place was empty. Slipping through a doorway in the back of the chapel, she climbed a narrow set of creaky stairs up into the attic. Here it was dark and dusty. The only light came through a large stained glass window that fractured the frank glow of sunrise into tiny, multicolored gems across the floor. I hadn't known until that moment that this room was a regular retreat for Lissa, but now I could feel it, feel her memories of how she used to escape here to be alone and to think. The anxiety in her ebbed away ever so slightly as she took in the familiar surroundings. She climbed up into the window seat and leaned her head back against its side, momentarily entranced by the silence and the light. Moroi could stand some sunlight, unlike the Strigoi, but they had to limit their exposure. Sitting here, she could almost pretend she was in the sun, protected by the glass's dilution of the rays. Breathe. Just breathe, she told herself. It'll be okay. Rose will take care of everything. She believed that passionately, like always, and relaxed further. Then, a low voice spoke from the darkness. You can have the academy, but not that window seat. She sprang up, heart pounding. I shared her anxiety and my own pulse quickened. Who's there? A moment later, a shape rose from behind a stack of crates, just outside her field of vision. The figure stepped forward, and in the poor lighting, familiar features materialized. Messy black hair, pale blue eyes, a perpetually sardonic smirk. Christian Ozera. Don't worry, he said. I won't bite. Well, at least not in the way you're afraid of. He chuckled at his own joke. She didn't find it funny. She had completely forgotten about Christian. So had I. No matter what happened in our world, a few basic truths about vampires remain the same. Moroi were alive. Strigoi were undead. Moroi were mortal. Strigoi were immortal. Moroi were born. Strigoi were made. And there were two ways to make a Strigoi. Strigoi could forcibly turn humans, dhampirs, or Moroi with a single bite. Moroi, tempted by the promise of immortality, could become Strigoi by choice if they had purposely killed another person while feeding. Doing that was considered dark and twisted, the greatest of all sins, both against the Moroi way of life and nature itself. Moroi who chose this dark path lost their abilities to connect with elemental magic and other powers of the world. That was why they could no longer go into the sun. This is what happened to Christian's parents. They were Strigoi. And this is where we'll end off for tonight's reading. I'll see you on the next video for the next chapters of Vampire Academy. I hope you guys enjoyed. Good night and sleep tight. Thank you.